Welcome to the I Am HVAC Growth Podcast, where we interview the top leaders in the HVAC industry across North America to understand how they grew their businesses to where they are today. I'm your host, Rob Murray, co-founder and CEO of Intrigue, a digital marketing agency focused on helping HVAC companies grow. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the I Am HVAC Growth Podcast. I have the pleasure of having Jason Laskis on the podcast with us today from DC Air. Stoked to have you. Thanks for doing this, man. Thank
you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Just to kind of kick this off, we're it's in a weird time right now. I mean, we're starting a podcast in the middle of COVID-19. It's kind of messed up. So how's that like going right now from your business, and like what's your team, how's your team handling it? What's going on these days?
Well, you know what, from the bat, like a lot of the other people probably watching this, we were deemed essential. So for us, we continue pretty business as usual, but we have implemented some new safety measures. Since we're doing R&C on a lot of our sites, we're just trying to work with our builders to get the best safety measures, make sure that we're working with them to implement them properly, and ensure that all of our guys are safe and healthy, as well as their guys on site.
Sweet, man. That's cool. Good on you. I know it's weird what's going on right now. No doubt about
it. It is odd.
Yeah. So maybe you could just introduce DC Air, the company, and like what it is that you guys focus on.
Okay. Well, DC Air, also known as Deary Contracting, has been around for 51 years now. It was our 50th year anniversary in 2019. So what we've been focusing on is low-rise residential new construction, R&C, and we do the supply, installation, and service on these new subdivisions. We're also starting to open up more into commercial, industrial, and mid-rise as well. So that's some new ventures for us that we're really looking forward to.
That's sweet, man. And so like when you guys are growing in these spots, just as like a kind of a quick tip, how do you get your clients?
Well, you know what, being around as long as we have and having the staff that we have here really helps with forming those relationships. It's all about relationships in our sector of business. And the employees that we have here, a lot of them have been here a very long time. Some people over 30 years. So with that amount of experience and relationship building, it makes expanding into other sectors quite simple because, these major builders who are doing these low-rise are also doing these other projects as well.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's a pretty solid strategy because you're kind of essentially leveraging the relationships you have to go into a new space. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. So in terms of the focus for today's talk, we're going to get into, indoor air quality, considering the times that we're in and kind of how important it's perceived to be and is to be. So maybe you can just start there and give us a sense of like what's going on in the industry from your perspective when it comes to indoor air quality.
Okay. Well, I know a lot of the builders that I've been dealing with have been asking me post COVID-19, how are we going to handle indoor air quality and give the homeowner the best indoor air once they first move in? Because a lot of these homeowners are going to their builders and they're worried about this, right? So as a lot of these people that are watching, these HVAC contractors know, HRVs have become a standard in Ontario for a while now. So HRVs are being put into the houses, which are bringing in the fresh air from outside, taking out that stale air, keeping it nice and fresh, eliminating the dust, the mold, bacteria, all that kind of stuff. So that was a first really big step I think Ontario took in getting some really clean indoor air quality. And then in the future, I think now what people are starting to look at is the filter that they're putting into that furnace, and they're paying more attention to it. I'm sure everybody has received the pain with the clogged, dirty, terrible furnace filters that homeowners have in their system that they're like, oh, I need to change this. Well, now they're starting to pay more attention to that. And not only just changing them and maintaining them, they're thinking about the quality now. So we're seeing homeowners now educating themselves and asking about what's a MERV rating? What MERV rating should I have in my house? What's the difference between a MERV 4, a MERV 8, a MERV 11? That kind of stuff, which is really cool. We're seeing a lot of our home builders now start putting in MERV 8s to MERV 11s in their units, which, helps your indoor air quality. It's going to eliminate those particulates, the mold, the dust. If you have a dog, it's going to help with a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, that's cool.
So that's the first kind of point, your MERV rating. Also with your filters, people are starting to look into UV light filters, which basically uses that ultraviolet light to eliminate and diminish those particles that I'm talking about, the dust, mold, bacteria, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So those are two interesting things. I think we're going to see a lot of people looking into those MERV ratings because it's the simple, cost-effective option. When you're starting to get into ultraviolet now, you're starting to get into different installs, a little more money. So in terms of cost effectiveness, homeowners and builders are going to be looking at that MERV rating and getting the best MERV rating, best bang for their buck as well.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, and how long has that been going on for, to see that switch from a consumer and builder side, going from not asking those kind of questions at all to like asking them almost every time now?
Yeah, well, it started off gradually. Now that we're having higher efficiency furnaces, we're having some higher velocities. They're increasing the quality of their equipment that they're putting into these houses when they're first building them. And by increasing the quality of this equipment, they're also trying to think of all the little things as well. So they're thinking about these filters now. So it started on that trend when we kind of started moving to higher efficiency, some different equipment, air handler units, that kind of stuff. And now with COVID-19 in the past, I would say 4 to 6 months, it's become on the forefront of everybody's mind. They're thinking about it, they're questioning it, they're researching it, which is great to see.
Yeah, that's cool. So, I mean, like when it comes to, talking to other, HVAC entrepreneurs and leaders, what kind of things would say to them about how they can starting this conversation or even positioning themselves to be part of that conversation? Because like a lot of websites don't have much info about this type of stuff when it comes to, the, lack of a better term, ABC, HVAC that's got maybe 20, 25 staff. They're not necessarily pumping education out around MERV ratings. And so, what can they do to start, getting into that conversation with the end user better?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. It's about educating the homeowner, right? But it's also about keeping it simple for them. So, the people watching this, you and I, we can spit back and forth, get technical with some things, but for the homeowner, they're not going to want that. It's going to confuse them. It's going to bore them and all that. A simple point that I've used with a homeowner, if they call and they're asking me about their MERV rating, is I tell them your lungs filter at a MERV rating of 4. So if you're going to Home Depot and you're getting MERV 4 or lower, you might as well not even put that in because your lungs are filtering most of those particulates.
Crazy. Right? That's a neat perspective.
Yeah, so it's interesting. When you say it like that, it's simple. It's something they can relate to, and it makes them think. So now when they're in Home Depot and they're looking at all these different filters, instead of it being rocket science, now they're saying, okay, well, my lungs filter at a MERV 4, so I want something higher than a MERV 4.
Yeah.
And you say, well, do you have a dog? Do you live by a park? Do you live by a construction site? Do you have kids with breathing problems, asthma, what have you? If the answer is yes to most, some, if not all of those questions, then I would say the higher the MERV rating, the better. I would recommend to them a MERV 8 to a MERV 11. Anything higher than MERV 11, your system might not function properly. So I would max it out at a MERV 11. If someone just says, what's something middle of the road, best bang in my buck, I say go to Home Depot, buy a pleated MERV 8. That's your best option. It's going to clean the most stuff, give you the best indoor air quality. It's going to eliminate those kind of floating dust in the air, and you're not going to wake up with the dry throat, runny nose, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's cool. And so then is there any other things that you guys are doing from like a marketing perspective? Are you leveraging, say, email with your customers, your website or social media, that type of stuff to kind of get this stuff out there?
Yeah, so we're really looking into educating the homeowner and making content that's going to be visually appealing, as well as something that a homeowner or a builder, whoever, will want to read. Something short, sweet, that can explain it to them and they can understand it properly. I mentioned HRVs earlier. A lot of homeowners are getting these HRVs in their houses and they have no idea what it is. You know, they have this box and they're like, what is this box? I know that's a furnace, but what is this box with all this flex attached to it, right? They have no idea how it works, and it can be very simply explained as it's taking the stale air that's returning into your system, pulling that out, and pumping some fresh, clean air from outside, filtering that, putting it back into your system. Simple as that.
Simple.
So you can explain this to the homeowner like that when they're asking, oh, when should it be done? You know, in the winter, you don't necessarily need to have it on. In the summer, I would say it's a must because, you know, you're starting to get more musty, more humid air. So the HRV is going to help with that. It doesn't do as much humidity control. It helps very slightly. Some will argue that it helps a lot. Some will argue that it doesn't do anything for humidity control. I think it somewhat helps because, I mean, you're putting in nice, crisp, clean air in there, and you're not just recycling that old grandma breath through your all the time. Right?
Yeah, no, it's cool. I mean, especially like one of the things you're talking about there, which I think is really neat, especially around, say, MERV rating or the idea of air quality being a conversation, COVID-19 really kind of being a catalyst to bringing that to the top of mind and the forefront of the conversation. And a lot of people, I don't think, quite understand, like, I mean, a lot of people understand blogging and what a blog is, but they don't necessarily do them. And so, you know, what MERV rating should I have in my furnace? What MERV rating is best for my home? These are awesome topics for anybody who's listening to this to be writing and posting on for your site, because then when people are Googling it in your area, they're going to find your content. And then I love the idea of that lungs are at a MERV rating of 4. Yeah, that's great. And I mean, I just think it makes it so tangible, right? And there's definitely a lot to simplifying the technical aspects of the industry so that people can, you know, kind of grab it and then they can make some decisions and be more educated on it. So I just love how you're doing that. It's great.
Yeah.
So if we, from a technology perspective, and we're talking about this idea of moving into better air quality, but now and then last time we talked about sustainable homes and net zero homes.
Yeah.
And the future of technology that's coming down that pipe. Like, can you just give the audience a little bit of a take on kind of what you're seeing now and what you see in the future when it comes to this type of home development?
Yeah. So for filtration, another big thing that you're going to have is HEPA filters, those high efficiency particulate air filters. It's just basically a box that sits on the ground. It's like an HRV, but it's tied into your return, and it's bringing that air that's coming back and it's putting it through another filter back into the return to then get filtered through the furnace again. So you see stuff like that. Some builders are looking to possibly make that standard. I know in older age homes where, you know, some of this COVID stuff and cold and thickness can be of a worry. They're looking to put that in just to have the cleanest air possible. In terms of net zero and sustainable homes, there's a ton of different stuff that you have. Some of the main stuff are solar panels. So you get the photovoltaic panels that basically turn sun's energy into electricity that then helps your home run on sustainable electricity more so than, you know, off the regular power grid.
Yeah.
That's big. And then you're using those solar panels, tying them in with smart equipment to then help run some of this equipment that's getting put into the basement, which, for example, are a mix of stuff. You'll do air handler units, or you can do geothermal. In relation with these solar panels, you can just do air handler units. And then the other thing that you have is for your hot water. You have solar thermal hot water, which basically just takes the sun's energy and is heating up that water, it's a really cool concept. It's something that I really want to dive into more on because you're seeing so much now with the rental hot water tanks and people looking, should I rent, should I buy? What should I have? Should it be tankless, a boiler, this or that? It's really cool for me lately that people are paying more attention to their HVAC system, because it's not an attractive trade.
Yeah,
We are not in an attractive trade. We don't have those beautiful granite countertops or excellent flooring or what have you. We are the ugly trade, the ugly duckling of the construction.
yeah. The guts though, right? Like that's the stuff that really matters.
We are the heart, lungs, we're the organs of the system, and without us, you can't live in that house. Bottom line.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see stuff like geothermal, where they're digging into the ground, they're using the heat and the cooling from the ground to then heat water and then put it back into the system and have a geothermal system like that. They're having those air handler units, which are more cost effective, paired with these solar panels. And it's a lot of cool options, but the downfall with them is the affordability. And that's something I think as an industry, we all have to focus on moving forward, what we need to do to make net zero energy efficient homes more attractive on the home buyers, home builders' wallets.
Yeah. So on that note right now, with the stuff that you're seeing and maybe some of the best case scenarios, is there a payback period in terms of length of time? So I know it's more upfront costs, but over time it's going to pay itself off. And like, what does that look like at this point? And then I got a follow up once we kind of get through that.
Okay. So you have your peak periods, right? By peak periods, I mean when you're using the most electricity, and when your house and your neighborhood is kind of on full go. So you're seeing around 5-6 o'clock when everybody's getting home, everybody's flicking on their lights, turning on the TV, making a cappuccino, whatever it may be, and they're using up a lot of electricity, right, at that time. When they're not home during the day, all their lights are off, none of their appliances are running, TV's not on, they're not using a lot of electricity. So that's what I mean by peak periods. You have time where, everybody's got their stuff on and most everybody has their stuff off. Also, at night when you're sleeping. So what we have to focus on is now if we're starting to use solar panels and electricity and all this other stuff, we have to focus on when those peak periods are and when to use our natural gas heating and when to use our electric heating and our different avenues there with the solar panels and whatnot. It also depends a lot on seasons and climate, because if we are using solar panels, in the winter time, you're not getting as much sun. Those aren't going to generate as much power. But now you're seeing that they'll integrate some sort of battery in, where during the summer, during really sunny days, beautiful days, they can absorb that energy, store it in the battery. So when there are those days where it's cloudy, overcast, rainy, snowy, what have you, they can draw power from those batteries and use it for their system to then still be sustainable.
Yeah, that's cool. And so in terms of the cost of a say, normal house in air quotes for anybody listening to the podcast versus a net zero house, as a percentage difference, if it was the same house, but one's net zero, one's normal, what's the price difference at this point?
I think if you're planning to do it from the start, if you're building a house and you say to yourself from the start, I want to make a green net zero sustainable house, it starts in the design phase, because you have to design the walls, the windows, the orientation of the house, everything to mesh with being a net zero house. I was reading about a house in New Jersey where they oriented the house to have a lot of natural sun exposure, which helped the house heat itself in the winter because it allowed more sunlight to come in. It allowed for that natural heating from the sun, and then made the house very tight, airtight, from the walls to the windows, double pane, what have you, triple pane. Every single little material that they used was meticulously planned in order to have this house be sustainable, be net zero, and be energy efficient, right? So it's not just your HVAC system. It's not a matter of having those solar panels, having the air handler unit, having a geothermal unit, solar thermal hot water tank. It's not just about that stuff. It's about the complete construction of the house. So not only as an HVAC industry, we have to come together as a building industry and just make a conscious effort to get these energy efficient designs done properly and executed at a high level as well.
Yeah, that's cool. And so do you have any sense then of what the difference in the cost of the house would be?
Well, that also leads me into the different costs of the house. It depends on what you're going to use. If we're doing geothermal, for example, there's a sweet spot in which you have to dig to. And if you are using geothermal, depending on where you're building, you could, not dig very deep and have it, pretty okay cost. Or you could have it, I remember speaking with a couple colleagues about a house in Oakville, which was a record for how deep they had to dig for a geothermal system. So geothermal, I think, has its benefits for sure, but it also has its downfalls when it comes to cost. So if you're thinking geothermal, that's an expensive option.
Yeah.
An air handler unit, we're seeing a lot of these stacked towns, back-to-back towns, where they're having high velocity systems with air handlers, and they're tying in with a hot water tank that's engineered spec. So that's the start of having energy efficient homes. And it's the cost difference between that and a regular furnace, I would say, is minimal as long as at the design stage it is designed properly, it's engineered to work with the hot water tank, to work with the air handler. The cost there is minimal. Where you're going to start getting into it is if you're going to start tying it in with the solar panels, you're going to have a geothermal and maybe a solar thermal hot water tank. If you want to do all the aspects, then yes, it's going to be a significant price increase from just a regular, cookie cutter furnace. But if you're just looking for an air handler, which will still help on your carbon footprint,
yeah,
you're not looking at much of a different cost.
Yeah, that's cool. So then, when it comes to the customer or the builder, are people more receptive to these ideas now and paying a little bit more and saving more energy, or is the financial impact still really constraining the purchase decision or the decision making process?
I think a lot of people who are educated about it think more about it, but there are still the homeowners that when they move in, they don't understand if they have a furnace or an air handler. You'll walk down and they'll say, my furnace isn't working, but it's an air handler.
Right.
So it's once again, educating them on what they have, how it works, why this is better, because it's more energy efficient, it's better for the earth, all that kind of jazz, and making sure that they know what's in their basement. It's not a furnace. You don't have those little rectangular registers. You have better air distribution, in my opinion, because you have more outlets for it. You have the number of circular heat runs in their house now, which gives you a better distribution of air, more even. So we get on air handler houses, we get less complaints from the homeowner on, this room's really chilly, or, this room's really hot, because we get a better distribution of air with that stuff. And it's still just as efficient, just as good, easy to use, easy to service. So I think air handlers are a great option, and I see them, heat pumps, geothermal, that kind of stuff being the future, as long as geothermal and heat pumps can kind of catch up and be more cost effective.
Yeah, that's cool. So one of the things it seems like you have a bit of a knack for is simplifying the description of technology and the equipment that's being used in the home. So when someone's like, what's the difference between an air handler and a furnace, what do you say to them?
Well, your furnace is going to use natural gas to fire up and then put air into the system.
Yeah.
Your air handler is tied in with your hot water tank, and they're going to work in tandem to do the same thing your furnace does, take that air and distribute it to the system. That's your difference.
Simple. That's simple.
keep it simple.
Yeah.
And, you know, the homeowner will appreciate it. You know, if I start diving in and getting too technical, they're going to start dozing off, right? And they're not paying attention to me. So as long as you can keep it simple for them, they know, okay, the air handler uses the hot water tank to heat my house. Okay, that's simple. I can understand that.
I get that. Yeah, that's cool. So when it comes to talking with other entrepreneurs, other HVAC companies, that kind of stuff, and this net zero that's coming, right? I mean, it's definitely going to be a trend, right? It's not going to be a fad. It's going to continue this way. And as a planet, we kind of have to move this way if we don't want to have some significant impact on the environment. So what's like one thing that they could start doing right now if they're really not in the space too much to provide this type of options for their customers?
I would say the first thing is if you're going to educate someone else, you have to educate yourself. I'm not some expert on this stuff, but I often read about it. I often try to educate myself, and I know what I don't know.
Yeah, that's cool.
There's plenty still left that I need to learn, that I need to research. And it's just a matter of going online, going to Google Scholar, going to the HRAI website, the HRAI website, reading their articles and reading some journals and just educating yourself, seeing some different examples, some applications that's gone on, how they've done them, what materials they've used, what equipment that they've used, and what was the cost to it and how did it work in the end. That kind of stuff, I would say as contractors, you need to educate yourself more. And as an industry, we need to have an open discussion about this stuff and educate one another as well, right? Like in everything, there's going to be people that are at the forefront. They're going to be the trendsetters, and they're going to start doing this stuff before others. And they need to encourage others to do this stuff. It shouldn't be some lockdown held secret. It should be shared, and everybody should know this information to give the earth and their clients the best.
Yeah, that's cool, man. And I mean, it all starts with self, right? We got to look inwards before we can go outwards. So that makes a lot of sense. And so if I'm in those shoes and I'm educating myself and I'm learning about what's going on in the industry, you know, from your perspective, what would be one of the, you know, most common pieces of equipment that's like low risk for a customer to get into, but makes a bit of an impact to switch over from, say, a traditional piece into a bit more of a sustainable technology?
That is an interesting question, because my response to you will be it is determined on what kind of dwelling that they have. Are they in a 4-story stacked town? Are they in a bungalow? Are they in a large mansion? What's going on there? So I think it's just a matter of what kind of space that you have and what you can do. Now, the simple answer I can give to you, which we've been talking about a lot during the podcast, are the air handler units.
Yeah.
If you're looking for something green, it would be those air handler units or a ground source heat pump. Those are probably the two pieces of equipment that you'll start seeing more and more. Heat pumps, you see a lot of the time, they just become kind of glorified air conditioners.
Yeah.
You know, it's the idea of now using that heat pump or air handler unit or what have you, using them to the max capacity and getting them to heat and cool and control everything there. So yeah, it's really just dependent on the dwelling there. But a simple answer, air handler units.
Yeah, and heat pumps. So that's cool. So when it comes to maximizing the use of, say, a heat pump, like you were referencing, you know, I had a heat pump installed, and I wasn't really given much instruction on what I should do with this thing and how it should work. It was just kind of like, okay, hands free. Hopefully it's just going to do its thing. So is there anything that, you know, contractors, builders, entrepreneurs that run these companies that should be doing to train their teams so that when they install something like this, they should be doing something to help the end user understand a bit more what's going on? Because I find a lot of times what we hear anyway from our clients is that they do the job, people are happy, the equipment's in, they didn't mess up their house, and that's the end of the relationship.
Yeah. I think if you are doing a if you have a business to consumer business where you're dealing directly with the homeowner, people appreciate you just taking some time and going through things with them, saying, you know what, I did this like that because of this reason, or this is your HRV. This, very simply, this is how it works. This is how you turn it on. This is when you should turn it on. This is your furnace, or this is your heat pump. Here's your air handler unit, what have you. Just going over it, giving them simple explanations, making sure that they know how to service them. If there are problems, making sure they know who to contact, whether it be you, if it's for a hot water tank, for example, and they're dealing with a rental company, making sure they know to reach out to their rental company, and just guiding them on how to maintain their system, how to fix their system, and how their system works.
Simple.
It's simple.
It's your middle name. I know, but it's just so commonly overlooked. So I just really appreciate how hopefully somebody hears this and starts to change the way that they're communicating, because I think that's a really, really important part. So
you know what? It saves you headaches, right? Because your tech or whoever's on the site is going to take that 10 minutes to go through that stuff, and then it's going to save you a 25-minute phone call of a homeowner, screaming and crying about X, Y, and Z. So I would say you definitely have a return on investment there as well.
That's cool. A good perspective for sure. So, to kind of wrap it up, there's all this new technology coming. Mm-hmm. What's the biggest shift that you think we're going to see over the next 10 years when it comes to HVAC in the home?
Well, personally, just a feeling that I have, I think we're going to see some government intervention. I think in terms of communities and houses and homeowners that are using this eco-friendly equipment and that are using net zero products and approved energy efficient products are going to get some sort of rebate or tax break when it comes to using this stuff. That's a personal thought that I think might get there, because climate change is a very political issue. So I think that's a direction that we could go in the future of getting rebates and tax breaks.
Yeah, and then that puts pressure on the market, right, to shift. So
exactly.
That's cool. So I really appreciate you doing this, man. Half an hour on HVAC. I just love a couple of themes that really kind of stuck out for me around keeping things simple. You have a MERV rating of 4 in your lungs. I just think that approach to communicating with homeowners and even builders, to have them understand, and other HVAC entrepreneurs and contractors, just to have that in their toolkit so that they can explain stuff to people, I think it's really, really impactful.
Yeah.
And just the idea of just being simple too, and not overcomplicating things. It's so easy for somebody in this industry to get technical really quick.
Yes.
And put someone to sleep. So I love that. And the idea of, simple steps that we could be taking to support, how we're building our homes or running our homes on more energy efficient stuff, even if it's just an air handler or, a heat pump or something like that. I just think it's a really cool perspective, because we don't all have to change everything that we do, right? Just one little step by a lot of people, and it makes a big difference. And the idea of, what's coming down the road in 10 years, government intervention. I didn't expect you to say that, but it makes a lot of sense that it's coming. So I really hope everybody that's listening to this got some value from this one. I know I did. It was super helpful. So Jason, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, cool. So I'm going to end off this podcast, but if you did like it, it's the I Am HVAC Growth Podcast. And if you thought it was awesome, feel free to go check it out on iTunes and give us a review. But that's it for today. Thanks again, Jason, for doing this. And I'm going to end this podcast.
Thanks for having me.